By no means am I the only person or the first person to say this, but we are joined by a bona fide in real settings here, Wonder Woman. This in real life is a Wonder Woman, and she joins us here on the Honest Something podcast. I'm Bryan Fenley. Carol Voronyak is with us, and this is a place where we look at the personal side of those who work in sports media. Carol had a great run at ESPN, doing so many great things, working in talent and negotiations, and now she is killing it as a talent coach and consultant, and as a mom of three and a coach in soccer. We're going to get into all of these things, Carol, and excited to have you on. Thanks for doing this.
Thank you, Bryan. Thanks for having me.
You as a golfer, let's go there first. I know that you've done a lot in terms of soccer coaching,
Hmm?
but you have multiple hole-in-ones.
I do. I
One
do.
was the last one you had, and how did you emotionally come to terms with this happening?
Yes. How did you find this out?
I do my due
Yeah.
diligence and do research. I might have looked on one of your socials,
Yeah,
so
there we
probably
go.
probably LinkedIn or maybe Instagram or something like that, or one of your interviews with where you went to school.
Yes. Okay. So I have two holes in one, both while pregnant, which I don't know if it's maybe the center of gravity was a little bit lower. Um, but yes, I had one when I was pregnant with my daughter in 2015 and one when I was pregnant with my son in 2017. So they were awesome. My husband was with me for both of them. My dad and my brother were with me for the first one. And yeah, that's one of those interesting facts that sometimes I bust out. Not usually on the first date though, Bryan. That's usually like a few down the line.
So why do you wait? Why do you not bring that out in the first date? Because you could really impress and surprise and perk somebody's attention, something that they would never forget. But is it sort of like you don't want to throw all the goodness at them right away? You
Right.
kind of want to lead them on a little bit?
Right, totally. And I feel like I've been fortunate enough to be blessed with a lot of good fortune and a lot of blessings over the last. I'm about to be 42, so on Wednesday, 42 years, and so yeah, and usually when I'm talking to people, especially now, it's about them. So I like to listen, and then if somebody wants a fun fact, then I'll bust something out like the fact that my great grandmother was the Morton Salt Girl, which the child model for the Morton Salt Girl. Yeah, hold the umbrella. When it rains, it pours.
Have
Yeah.
you, have you ever, as a Halloween costume, done that?
You know what? I've seen other people do that, but no, I have not. Not myself. No.
As someone like in this setting now, so you're going to be doing more of the talking, and I'll be doing more of the listening.
Mhm.
How hard is that for you to reverse what you're used to and you being the listener?
Right. So I'll probably be paying a bit more attention to my filler words, which I hate. And Bryan, they say those who can't teach. So I originally wanted to do stuff on air when I was in college, but it's funny story, when I first came to my interview at ESPN, I brought my resume tape from, J354 or whatever during class. Had my resume reel, my really impressive weather clips. I did a bit of traffic too. But I brought that to Fred Brown, who was the head of hiring at ESPN at the time. And he basically said, you know what, Carol, if this is a goal and a passion of yours, you should hold on to it. And you should not accept any job if it were to be offered to you at ESPN, because this is a huge stage. This is the biggest stage, and we don't want you to make your mistakes here, and you will make mistakes. So it was at that moment where that on-air dream for me died, but that was okay. It was for the greater good, and I never knew that I'd be in a position to be coaching or consulting with on-air talent, but I just knew that I was all right on air. I wasn't anything super special. I was very good scripted, but as you know, much of sports is ad-libbed and you need to be in the moment. And usually when it's time for me to audible, I usually need a second to sort of compose myself. And so that's why anytime I consult with people, I always tell them, look, you guys have a hard job, and you do. I really do think that play-by-play hosts and long-term, like 3 hour radio hosts, man, you guys have a hard job to be able to be engaged the entire time, to be able to shepherd people through the journey that is live sports, tell a story, inform, excite, and entertain. Most people get away with just one of those, but the best people can do all three.
In what ways were you able to inform, excite, and entertain as a broadcaster of traffic?
Yeah, I mean, this was we're going way back here now. I don't think I did really any. I think I probably had okay information, but I was usually pretty nervous. Tried to make sure that I looked all right. But as I said, this was not. It was probably not going to be a very long career on air, but it ended up being a very nice career that I'm still currently in behind the scenes.
Even though you've been behind the scenes, your ability to spot great talent, your ability to sort out what works, what doesn't. And sure, you said that there was that moment of truth for you where you could have gone down the route of on air or spent time at ESPN. But even though you went the ESPN route and went behind the scenes, the amount of on air knowledge that you carried with you, in a way, to what extent did that scratch sort of the desires or fulfill it just a little bit of what maybe you wanted to do as an on-air personality, just in you being immersed in that world, even if it's behind the scenes, and learning what it takes to be at your best and to go down that road as somebody who scouts it out and looks for the best in people?
I think what it does is it brings a level of empathy for the folks who are on air to understand what a deep pool of candidates it is, how much practice and how many reps. And you brought up golf earlier. I oftentimes I'll relate broadcasting to golf because you meet people and they're like, "Gosh, I stink at golf," and it's like, well, do you stink or do you just not play? Broadcasting TV is the same way. Are you rough or have you just not done the reps? As a play-by-play person, I'm sure you can, if you look back at your early play-by-play, it's probably like, yikes, right? And now that you've done, I mean, how many would you say you've done reps?
Well, I would say, for volleyball, getting to do ESPN this fall for volleyball. So I've done, and here's the thing with that, Carol, it's like with, I think some people, like, you can't, in my opinion, you can't have like when you're first immersing yourself in a sport and wanting to get good at it. I caution some people who come to me and say, well, I only want to do D1. Look, I will do, when it comes to volleyball, I will do, and over the course of, like, as you said, it's all based upon repetition. I will do I have done the lowest division of high school. I
Mm-hmm.
will do junior college. I it Sometimes people get concerned about the level they call as if that's where they are as a broadcaster. And
Mm-hmm.
honestly, if you can just shed that ego and say, look, it doesn't matter what level I'm doing this game, it's the repetition that matters the most, so that when I'm ready, I'm better suited for that opportunity. So, like, my approach has been, and I've run into people, and I'm sure, like, across your journey, you've seen this, where somebody might be a certain age and they might tell themselves, oh, I should be here because I'm 30 and I should be
Mm-hmm.
this and that. And they limit themselves, which then limits their amount of repetitions, which then, when the time is ready or when they think they're ready, they're actually not, because they have, in a sense, I don't want to use the word sabotage, but they've gotten in their own way because of this feeling, I got to be here when I should be, at this certain age, when honestly, you just take whatever you can get and
Mm-hmm.
then use that to make yourself a better broadcaster.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you said a lot there. And the reps for me, when I'm talking with people and I'm coaching them, I think that you have to, I try to be very realistic with people because, as you know, some of these reps that you're talking about don't pay very much.
For
So I
sure.
think it's very important to understand, like, if you're going to go in and you're going to make $100 for a 3-hour broadcast, that's not even counting all of the prep time and all of the film and everything that you're watching. right? So like if you're going to be putting in 15, 20 hours and making that $100, I think I tell people, like, is this a passion project? Is this something that you really, really want to do and get better at? Because those are where the opportunities are going to be early on. And some people can skip the line in a way, but there is a level of humility that people and reality that people need to have, that, hey, most people aren't going to be able to graduate college and just step onto a network level. It's not going to be like that. Some people are, and there's different factors that go into that, but try to be very realistic with people when there's not just one path to success. And calling games at network level doesn't need to be the ultimate success for everybody. Maybe having a family and being able to see them and doing a package of 20 games a year and having a salaried job that you love, maybe that's your definition of success. So I like to try to wipe the slate a bit for people, that it doesn't necessarily have to be ESPN or bust, or Fox or CBS, NBC or bust.
How do you weigh how do you weigh success with what you've done and where you are and where you're going?
Mm-hmm. So for me, I was fortunate enough to be able to stay at ESPN as the only place of employment for my entire career up until the time that I walked away. So I think many people would look at that as a success in terms of being at a place, being very well treated, very well at a place, and finding family in a place like ESPN. I was given lots of really cool opportunities with talent, with running a division. Before I moved over into the talent office, I was in ran the talent producers department, which was really fun. And honestly, a lot of what I did as a booker and as the director of bookers was stuff that I'm going to remember for the rest of my life. I worked with a lot of awesome people: Jason Romano, Leeson Stokes, Jamila Phillips, Audrey Cates. Like, there's so many people that I worked with in that level. Tim Scanlon was our
he's been on with me here.
Yes,
he's been a guest.
yes, I know. Tim's awesome. And so doing that, if you would have asked me at that point, I would say, like, hey, yes, this is as successful. I'm at the top of the mountain. For me though, I think from the time that I was doing that till now, there's like a 12, 15-year gap. And in that, my faith has really been changed. I am now, a follower of Jesus. And for me, that changes pretty much everything in terms of how do I see success. Success is putting him first, honoring my husband, honoring my family, and also doing excellent work for whoever's employing me. So if that's for doing excellent work for ESPN or CBS or whoever was going to employ me, then that's what I always want to be excellent. If it's for the people that are paying for my consultation, I am going to go so hard for them. I've had a lot of people ask if I would ever consider being an agent. And, I do think that my skill set would lend itself to that category, but I would want to go so hard for my clients that I just don't know that the bandwidth that I have right now. Right now, for me, I feel like I'm sitting in a place of success because I'm able to be the wife that I want to be, the mom that I want to be, the friend that I want to be. That's important too. Sometimes us moms kind of delve into kids' work, and it's important to have friendships as well. So I feel like I'm in a good balanced place right now where if I were to look at my life and say, what are you going to be doing when you're about to turn 42? This is a pretty cool story to be able to write.
It is, because you said you had the balance. But if we look at so many people in this industry that I come across and that you have, finding that balance is so hard. Why is it so hard to find that balance? And it becomes such a full-fledged, nonstop pursuit of work where it becomes that much harder to have balance. Why do you see that so pervasive in our industry?
I think it's addictive. like, I think success and being needed and being wanted is addictive. And um, for me, I always liked being able to pick up the phone and seeing like, oh, somebody needs me. Let me respond to them. Let me help them. I liked helping people, but was it my pride of like wanting to be first to respond to the email? I mean, that's sort of lame when I think about it, but that's how I used to be. Like, hey, there's a group email. Can I be first? Let me respond to that. So I think that there's a lot of people in the industry who have that same attitude, or I think that the industry has been built on people that are doers. And I think there's innovators and creative folks as well, but there needs to be doers as well. So when you're a doer and there's a lot to be done, that can kind of lead you down that rat race. And in a 24/7 news environment where the work is never done, it's really hard. I mean, there was only a few times that I took a legit vacation where I didn't look at my phone. As embarrassing as that is to say, I went to New Zealand one time, and that was back in 2010 or 2011, and put away from my phone for whatever it was, 10 days. And then on my honeymoon, I would hope that I could shut it down on my honeymoon.
Yeah.
But every other time I did feel like I felt the desire, and it wasn't necessarily the explicit expectation, but just hey, this is my career, and I know that if people need an answer, so I don't want to be the person that's slogging up the system. Like, I want to give them their answer so that they can move on, because there's so much that needs to be done in a given day, like for any production.
You mentioned so much of that in being there for people and responding is your love of helping others.
Mm.
And when you mentioned the finding of the faith and how that became perhaps a step for you to help yourself, you're so giving of your time to your family and obviously everything you've done work-wise to those that were at ESPN and even now. But what have been the most important steps for you over the course of your life and where you've done the most work in helping yourself?
Hmm. Yeah, that's a good question, because for many years, I was fortunate enough to not have experienced much adversity. I was given athletic ability and ability to study well in school. And so I didn't necessarily have to deal with much adversity. So that the deep work that needed to be done, I mean, maybe I needed to do it, but I just felt like I was living fine. I really enjoyed my work. I really enjoyed ESPN. My family, my parents were married for many years, but then in 2010, my mom was diagnosed with a brain illness that we thought might be it might be early onset Alzheimer's. They didn't know. And so for the first time, I was faced with something that was not just kind of going my way. And so at that point, I knew that in order to do something for myself, I was probably going to need to leave Bristol. And so in order to take care of myself, which was in being closer to my family, I didn't know exactly how I was going to do this, but I talked with my brother, and I talked with Marcia Keegan, who was an advisor to Norby, about how do we put together this plan for me to work remote back in 2010 when that wasn't really a thing. And so we put together this plan, and ESPN allowed me to work remotely, and before it was popular. And so that's probably what I would describe as me doing something for myself, where it wasn't necessarily for the betterment of ESPN, but I did 3 categories. I said, here's how it's going to be the same. Majority is same, phone and email. Here's how it's going to be different, but I added in a 3rd category. Hey, here's how it's going to be better. I'm now going to be in Chicago. I wasn't moving to Richmond, Illinois, which is where I'm from, but I was hoping to live in Chicago. The folks at the ESPN 1000 offices let me work out of there. They were awesome. That's Jim Pastor, John Cravens. And I was able to sort of build a new little Chicago work family, and still manage my team from afar. And then I was still on a plane every, 4 to 6 weeks, wherever they needed me to go, whether it was Bristol or LA or Charlotte or New York or some on-site event. But that's it was during that time when my mom got sick, and that I was really at a bit of a crossroads. And then meeting my husband, and he is a Christian, and that's where I would say that I found my faith in getting to know him and how he lived his life, and me seeing that that's how I want to live my life as well.
You getting to meet your husband, how did that happen?
Oh, well, we were at the gym, and he was working there at the time, and I was at the end of a very long workout, very sweaty, and I was on the scale, and he came up to me, and he was not hitting on me. He was just trying to tell me that this was not going to be an accurate weight. And I said, oh, well, okay, like, is it going to say I weigh more or less than I do? He said, right? He goes, well, it's going to say I weigh less. I said, okay, well, great, because I've been eating lots of cookies, and I'm okay with that. Right. And so he said, okay, well, what kind of cookies? And he smiled, and I was like, whoa, this guy's really handsome. Right. And so blah, blah, blah. We talked a bit. I left. I called Molly Karam, who's my best friend. I called her and I said, I just met the hottest, nicest guy. And he told my age. I had just turned 30, my weight, and what I look like without makeup. I'm right. I was like, he always says, he's like, babe, if I would have proposed on that second date, you would have said yes. I said, I don't know. You're probably not wrong, but it was great. He came into my life just when I needed it. So.
And what's been great about raising these kids that you have together?
Yeah. So those are our three, we call them our three crazies. They're fun. Hope is in second grade. Valor is in kindergarten, and then Lion is 3.5. So he's in a 2-day a week program, but it's been really cool. We made a move to Tennessee from Chicago to Tennessee at the end of 2020. And so, the weather is a bit nicer here. Not as nice as California though. Are you San Diego?
I grew up in San Diego, now in El Segundo, so right by LAX. So yeah, right in LA.
Okay, so not quite California-ness, but we do have all 4 seasons, and it's just been wonderful to be able to have a backyard, which we didn't have in Chicago, and we're really close to the soccer fields, and so it's 90 seconds away. So even like later today, I'm going to take my little son over to the fields in the park and play. So it's been really fun to be able to, stepping away from work, ESPN full time has allowed me to be more immersed in their lives day to day. So while I don't necessarily have the security of a salary or some of the other things that come along with full-time employment, it's just been wonderful to be able to be with my kids, and because they're only going to be little for so long. So it's been awesome.
You do though have the security of soccer trophies.
That's right. Unfortunately, this is our runner-up trophy from this weekend, Brian. Oh man, we were so prepared. This is my U8 team. So my daughter Hope is 7. And so 8U, it's 8 and under. You gotta be 6, 7, or 8. The 6s are turning 7. So it's mostly 7 and 8-year-olds. And we got this team together. We were runner-up last year. There's 16 teams in the league. So feel pretty good about it. But man, we were trying to avenge our one loss earlier in the season, but came down to it. We lost 3-2, but we played great defense. My husband and I kind of broke it down earlier, hindsight's 2020. So probably should have pressed up a bit more at the end, but we were able to bring it back, lost 3-2. And it's a good lesson though. In life, you're probably going to lose more than you're going to win just in terms of how many games are played. Like someone has to lose in order for somebody else to win. And so I was really proud of my team for how they responded and how respectful they were to the ref and to the other team. And so, yes, but this is our second place trophy. I kind of want to throw it in the garbage, but oh well.
There will be another opportunity. I want to leave you with this, Carol. So you mentioned, life really is a game of, in a sense, wins and losses. And as I go over what you've been saying in this conversation, I think one of the big wins for you had been that moment where you realized that, hey, you had that life moment with your family and you had to ask for what you wanted. And that was the change in moving to closer to your family. How has and why has, do you think, in our industry, why can it be so hard for people to ask for what they really want? And when you saw that work for you, it certainly was an invaluable, priceless move in your life.
Well, I think it kind of goes back to that question that you had about why do people feel the need, why is it so hard to turn off? Well, there's so many people and there's so many really talented people, especially on air, who, when you are, one thing I really dislike about our industry is I dislike that there are people who are in on-air positions who feel like they don't necessarily want to take too many days off because the person who's going to replace them, if they're, if they spark, then maybe is that person going to replace me? So I dislike that about our industry. But yeah, I don't really know. I remind me, sorry, I zoned out for a minute.
No, you're good. No, just the idea of like, sometimes it can be hard for people to really ask what they want or in this industry. But and you did that, and that could not have been easy when you went to ESPN and you did that. But it was probably, from what I'm gathering, one of the greatest moves and greatest decisions, even if it took, a little boldness to ask and then to receive.
Right. I also think that in this industry, people, it's tough, right? Because sometimes, let's say you do have an agent and that agent's making that ask. That agent's also representing other people. So are they going to burn an ask on somebody who is that ask like really important in the big scheme of things, or is the person that's making, I don't know, $750K, and they're going to see a bit more of that, a bit more of that commission? Or when somebody's representing themselves and they're asking for it, the hard thing is there's not a lot of like people don't necessarily have a lot of sturdy ground. And we saw it earlier at ESPN back in June when 19 really talented people were laid off. And now those talented people are back in the workforce available for hire. And now the person that's trying to climb the ladder is not only competing with people on their same level, but they're now competing with other people who've been let go, who aren't ready to just hang it up. They're not ready to hang up, turn off the microphone just yet. And so there's a lot of there's just so much talent that sometimes it makes it seem like there's not a lot of footing that someone has on the other side. But I do think that when you're very honest with your employer, as somebody who was on the other side of the table when I did the hiring, I really did try to be a good listener, and I tried to understand what somebody's needs and desires were. And I usually couldn't come up with it on the financial end, but maybe there was a give that wasn't going to be so detrimental to ESPN that I was able to do. So I think that it doesn't hurt to ask, but I do think that there needs to be an awareness about what just happened, right? Like, is what's going on in the world right now, what's going on at the company right now, is now the best. If 19 people were just laid off, is now the time to be asking for a promotion or more money on a marketing deal? I think that it's up to it's up to like your social IQ, right, or your emotional IQ to sort of read the room on when you should ask for what you want, but you should definitely never settle for something that you, as you look back on it and you say like, why did I make that decision? So
As we wrap up this conversation, never settling is your MO. And it goes even into the depths of you being a soccer coach. There's that second place trophy, but coming up later on, I know you're going to be at one point hoisting that first place trophy. And that's what it's going to mean a whole lot. And you mentioned reading the room, and reading the room in this conversation and getting to know you more, as I mentioned at the beginning, for so many more reasons than one. This is why you really are a Wonder Woman in this industry, and really a special person, from being a mom, the wife you are, to the openness that you shared with that life moment that changed the trajectory of where you were going and where you were living and all of that, to being able to have this really straightforward and authentic conversation meant a lot to me. Carol Voronyak, I'm Bryan Fenley. Thanks so much for doing this with me. I appreciate it so much.
yeah, thank you, Bryan. I wish you the best of luck with the rest of the podcast and all your assignments, and keep grinding, man. Okay.